It's almost St. Patrick's Day. We made a mead a year ago for this day. Let's drink it. So this is 13%, ended at 1.010. But we have to get it from the bottle into glasses. So you know what it's time for? The pour can.
Our making of, we actually intended for this to be green. It is not green. It wasn't green. It just didn't work out.
It does have a gorgeous color though.
It's a really pretty
Beautiful
color.
amber.
It's like almost like a tea color.
And this was like a metheglin, very heavy on the herbs rather than spices, as I recall. Tried to use things local to Ireland, I think.
We did research.
Yeah, since then people have come forward with a few more things, and it actually has a really interesting scent.
Yeah, you get the herbaceousness, but you also get a lovely floral note too.
The honey comes through.
I think the aroma is really quite nice.
It definitely is a metheglin, as in like a medicinal. It has a medicinal quality to it.
It even has like a light, like almost citrus.
Mm-hmm. Yep, I think we added lemon or orange zest to it, which may not have been completely appropriate for the area, but I think we've looked that up and they've had them since a certain time period or something, so.
Who knows? We don't go back and look at our recipes, so.
Well, also back in the day, people didn't write recipes down. They said, we're gonna make this thing, and that's what they did. They didn't write it down, they passed it down verbally. That
doesn't matter. This is our recipe, so history isn't material here.
Oh, okay. I'm gonna taste it. It's medicinal. It's a metheglin, an herb metheglin, which I have to make that distinction because a spiced metheglin, like made with spices, is more my style. The herb metheglin, not really my thing.
That said, I'm getting the weird mouth-warming sensation that you get from like cinnamon or...
Yeah, it does seem to have some of that.
That's really interesting.
But I know we used a bunch of herbs in this. Mm-hmm. It's definitely an herb-forward mead. I do get some honey character. It's 1.010. I think I would have liked this a little sweeter.
Yeah, I'm thinking sweetening.
If it was sweeter, this would be better. I remember when we first made it, we were like, this is okay. I still think it's okay. It's maybe like an okay plus at this point.
It is definitely an okay plus. My brief recollection from a year ago, I think it was a little too discordant. I feel now that those different herbal notes are coming in together and smoothing out, as Brian stated. The only ingredient I remember that we added to this specifically was heather tips. I know we put heather tips in this.
There's meadowsweet in it too.
And I thought meadowsweet was in it, but I knew heather was in there.
Heather tips, meadowsweet, and there was one other that I can't recall. And we don't check them on purpose so that we aren't biased, okay? I'll be totally honest, this is not my favorite thing that we've made. But I do think with some sweetness it would improve. And we're gonna test that theory after we give it a score as is, because that's the way we do things. Now this was done before we did our let's perfect this before we bottle.
Right.
So it might have been, well, this is how it came out, so we're gonna put it in a bottle. Not the best system, but that's what we did a year ago.
I feel like...
Moving on.
My comparison to the part of it that I'm not finding pleasurable is similar to that to an oversteeped tea.
Yeah.
I feel like it's getting some of those...
It's astringent.
Astringent notes and those harsh, bitter notes that may have been from over-extraction, or it may have simply been because we didn't balance it enough with sweetness.
We didn't balance the sweetness. It's not overly acidic for what it is.
No.
It's not overly tannic. It
feels like those two are actually...
But those are the predominant flavors.
Nicely.
Is acid and tannin.
It just needs more of that sweetness to make everything...
Mm-hmm. It's just out of balance is all it is.
All right, so let's give this numbers as is.
Are you sure? I'm going off of my own experience with it. And our scoring system goes 1 through 10 in half steps. 1 meaning it basically just sucks. You probably just dump it out. There's no hope for it. Nothing you can do to make it better. 10 means it's awesome. Probably one of the best things you've ever made. And if it happens to be an 11, it's one of those bright, shining examples of mead or brew perfection.
I'm
You
ready.
1, 2, 3, 3.
5.5.
Yep. I'm a 3. It's not my wheelhouse. It's not my thing. I know it's mead, but only barely. I don't think it has a lot of honey character. It has some. It comes through on the nose more than it comes through in the taste. The herbs are a little overpowering to me. We use too many for the sweetness level that this is. And that's an important distinction. People are always asking, how much sweetness should it have? Or how much herb should I put in there? Or how much of this should I put in? That really depends on what you want. We did one recently that was a spiced mead that we ended up making it much more higher final gravity, a lot more sweet because there was so much spice in it. Now that was by accident. It was a spice that we'd never used before, so we didn't really know what to expect from it. And it ended up extracting a lot more than we thought. But the herbs work much the same way. You can use a lot of those herbs as long as you back that up with the sweetening. It's kind of like, it's a balance. I mean, everything in balance. So if we had used less herbs, maybe the sweetness would have been okay.
I have a good analogy for
Okay,
this.
go for it.
And I'm going to use wine because I think wine is something that people are more consistently aware of the differences between a dry wine and a sweet wine.
Okay.
So if you have a dry wine, the lack of sweetness in that wine really pushes forward any subtle flavors that may be inherent to that wine. So
Okay.
you're getting all these little pops of notes of things that you may not have noticed if it was a sweet wine. Sweet wines tend to be less complex, but if you have a sweeter palate, then you tend to enjoy those because you get the sweetness with the subtle additional notes in there. We actually saw this in a wine that we were working on where we were trying to determine if we were going to back sweeten it or not. And the flavor profile was so lovely that when we did a small sample test that we back sweetened, those notes went away. It became just a sweet wine rather than all these subtle nuanced pops that were in the drier version.
I agree with you in theory. However, sugar and salt are both flavor enhancers, so if done properly, shouldn't overshadow or overpower anything. They should bring it up.
I think it depends a lot on the notes that are in the brew.
Agreed.
So,
it's a case-by-case basis.
For example, spice notes, which tend to be more abrasive left to their own devices, can use a lot more sweetening added to them and still retain their original note
they're very
profile.
astringent and tannic.
Right.
So.
And I think similar with this, these notes are very pronounced.
It tastes vegetal to me.
I feel sweetening this is just going to lower the bitter part and let those notes that I'm enjoying in it already still,
now I see where you're going.
Still shine.
Now, when I say vegetal, a couple people have asked what I mean by that. It doesn't taste like a good herbal tea or something like that. It tastes like green leaves. Like you just walked outside, you grabbed some vegetation and put it in
kale.
Yeah, raw kale. Perfect example. I don't like raw kale. Cooked kale, different thing. But raw kale, I don't like it. This just tastes vegetal to me. It tastes raw. It tastes like something you don't really want to drink unless you're feeling like crap and you want to feel better and it supposedly makes you feel better. That's kind of what this reminds me of, which is what, metheglin is. It's a medicinal mead. So that's why I gave it a 3. I couldn't justify going much higher than that.
I still see some merit in this, and that's why I bumped it to the 5.5, because I feel like it's not where I want it to be, but I don't feel a need to dump it down the sink.
Oh, no. Well, it's not a 1. I do see where if we did some things to it, it might be salvageable and get to a higher score. So suck that down and let me grab a different glass and we're going to sweeten this up and see. Or you could just pour that into the glass and we can go from there.
Let's get some honey.
All right. So we're going to use this Oregon wildflower, I think it is, honey, from Jeremy Burke, who sent this to us. As you can tell, we've been using it. And I'm going to go with like that much.
All right, I'm gonna let you pour it.
She spilled it all over the
I
place.
was pouring so well for the pour cam, and then I poured Brian's glass. It was wonderful, and he's like, "Oh,
I wanted to use it for a thumbnail
let's
because it
do
looked that good.
picture." And then I went to pour it for the picture, and
More ended up on the table.
I guess it was because he wanted me to
gotta
pour
commit to it.
slow, or I hesitated, and all was lost.
You got to commit to it.
It was a disaster.
So I think that's probably more honey than we really needed for this, but that's why I filled the glass halfway. I can always add more, and we can dilute the amount of honey. But we'll just try. And if you do this, yes, it's going to cloud it up. See, we lost the clarity. It was a nice like 10 for clarity.
It was a lovely clarity.
And again, on the clarity, this did not have pectic enzyme, did not have glycerin, did not use any clarifiers of any kind. That's a common misconception. A lot of people seem to think that you have to use those things all the time to get clear. No, you really don't. We use pectic enzyme when there's pectin in what we're putting in there. And we'll occasionally use glycerin afterwards if it's necessary.
We don't use glycerin.
Not glycerin. Why do I keep saying glycerin? Gelatin. 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 Glycerin's for mouthfeel. People use that for mouthfeel and slight sweetness. We've never tried it. No. The only downside to this is it takes forever to mix it through. Now, I don't guarantee that sweetening this is going to make it like a 10 for me, but I think it should improve it. And we'll just, it's more about the flavors that it brings out. Here's the thing. A lot of people will say, oh, you can sweeten up anything and make it taste good. Well, to a point that's true, but we're not trying to mask flavors as much as enhance what's there in a way that works for us, which is sort of masking the flavors, but not exactly.
I had a thought and then it went away, so
Poof.
it does that.
All right, ladies first.
I am actually getting more of the honey on the aroma.
That was one of my issues with it. There wasn't a lot of honey character. I got more on the aroma than the taste, but I wanted it in the flavor too. Yeah, definitely still has the vegetal note in the aroma. More honey though. See, now that's not bad.
Yeah.
And it's not overly sweet. I thought this was going to be like through the roof sweet.
It reminds me of a candy.
It's kind of like probably a 1030, 1.030 or so sweetness, maybe even slightly less, like 1025. I'm not going to break out the hydrometer because I don't even have enough for a sample. A candy?
Like an old-fashioned candy.
Werther's Originals.
Is that what it is?
Might be. I don't know. It's just what came to mind.
It's like toffee or...
Yeah. They're like a toffee.
Yeah.
Now, what this did for me is it rounded it out. It took a lot of those extra abrasive, astringent notes.
The bitter is pretty much gone.
Yeah,
Like,
and
totally
took that
gone.
away. Now I can taste more of the floral notes of the heather tips, the supposed sweetness of meadow sweet. I have yet to experience a great meadow sweet mead myself. People keep telling us about it, but I know it's the original mead herb. But
We just have to go to
yeah, we need fresh meadow sweet.
Norway or wherever they...
You know, Ireland.
Ireland. I would take either of those places. Thank you.
Okay, my opinion, this takes this from a 3 to more like a 6.5, maybe even a 7.
Yeah.
I would put that up that much higher.
Yep.
And that goes to show you how the balance of a mead can make all the difference in the world. And it's really, really hard to say, we're making this recipe, you guys try it at home, you're going to get the same experience as us. Really hard, because a different honey, even just a little bit more, a little bit less honey, a little bit more, a little bit less water. If your herbs are fresher than ours, if your herbs are a better quality or a lower quality, it can come out different. So there's always a little bit of fine tuning when you're using this many ingredients. We do have some stuff coming up that is like, here's a blend that you can buy all at once. So you're buying the exact thing that we have. And short of the same honey, it's the same brew. So we are aware of stuff like that. And this is a perfect example of that I think this is perfectly fine. If we had made it this way in the beginning and it mellowed for a year, this would be fantastic. It'd probably be a higher score. Just the addition of a little bit of sweetness, it's not overly sweet. I can still taste all the herbs and there's still a good...
Yeah.
Yeah, changed everything about it. So yeah, there's a lesson for you. Get the balance right in your brew. And that takes some time, some practice, and being able to recognize the three basic components, which this is important: acids, tannins, and sweetness. If you can detect between acids and tannins, sweetness, everybody, oh, it's sweet or it's not sweet, but acids and tannins are different. And if you can detect those two and know what's missing or what's too strong, you can start to balance your meads and get much better brews, wines, meads, whatever. Even if you're making cocktails, that's how it's done. They're balancing acids, tannins, and sweetness to get what they want. But yeah, this is way better now.
Yeah.
So, happy St. Patrick's Day. A little early. And as always, guys, thanks so much for watching and have a great day.
Bye-bye.